Hello guys, this is Nick from forexfornoobs.com with my midday analysis. If you enjoy this analysis, please hit the like button below and hit the subscribe button below to subscribe to my YouTube channel for more analysis, webinars, and awesome Forex education videos. Before I start, I want to tell you how my analysis works. Every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, I hold a live analysis session. In the analysis, I cover all the pairs I'm currently trading. This is usually 10 to 20 pairs, and I do multi-timeframe analysis on those pairs. Multi-timeframe analysis means that I look at every timeframe I have for each pair. I do not trade all of those timeframes though. I use them for analysis. The only timeframes I actually trade are the 3, 4, 6, 8, 12, and daily. The reason I do this is because price action is fluid. Price is always moving. If you look at a single time frame, you are seeing a single snapshot of price, and that can be misleading. By looking at a lot of different time frames, you get more snapshots, which gives you a much clearer idea of what price is doing right now. This also ensures that I rarely miss a trade setup. I do my multi-time frame analysis 2 to 4 times per day, so every 4 to 8 hours. This ensures that I see almost every candle forming, which makes it hard to miss a setup. I only post my analysis to YouTube once per day though, as I cannot record every time I do my analysis. You should remember, I do not find trade setups every time I do analysis. Trade setups are not always there when you want them to be. If I do not find a trade setup in the midday analysis, I might find one in the next analysis I do later in the afternoon or the evening. Trade setups aren't always there when you want them, and just because I'm doing analysis, it doesn't mean I'm going to find a setup. Also, if I do find a setup, remember that these are just potential setups. Not every setup I find is actually going to turn into a trade. Many of these setups will never trigger, or they'll just be cancelled. Just because I say that I'm considering entering a setup, it doesn't mean that the setup will actually trigger. But when they do trigger, I enter them, and I post the updates to my blog, which is linked to below. Finally, you may notice that I sometimes fast forward through parts of this analysis. I do this when I cannot find any setups on the pairs that I'm looking at. It saves you watching 5 minutes of me running through charts and saying there's no setup here. So I'll just fast forward through those boring parts. Anyway, enjoy the analysis. Today is Wednesday, the 21st of September 2016, and the time is 11:13 here in the UK. You're looking at a Euro GBP daily chart. Okay, so let's get started with the analysis. All right, so Euro GBP, we spoke about this pair a little bit yesterday, and we were looking at a potential short trade from this resistance area up here. Now, what has price done? Price has formed indecision slightly below the resistance area. When you see something like this happen, you always have to ask yourself, is it safe to enter? So, I kind of want to enter short. I think it's a good setup. But it's bouncing kind of from this resistance area rather than this one up here. The thing about resistance though and support, is that it's not always an exact line. So we essentially have 2 support resistance areas here. Because they're spread far apart, you can call them like 2 separate support resistance areas. But see, when they're that close together, I don't really like doing this. I don't like having 2 support resistance areas like that. It just doesn't make sense to me. So what I rather do is just stick one in between them and call this the support resistance area. But in doing that, we're not really changing much. The point still is that this is forming pretty low. And whenever you have a trade forming to the low end of a support or resistance area, or to the low end of a resistance area to the high end of a support area, you're always going to run into trouble with your stop loss. Why? Because the safest place to put your stop loss is beyond the resistance area. So that would be somewhere up here would be the ideal stop loss. Because, we're counting this as resistance, that's all resistance up there. So you'd want your stop loss somewhere up there. So that would make your entry here, your stop loss there. That is a pretty big stop. And, realistically, we're never going to get a good risk to reward ratio with a stop that big. Yeah, at the next support area, it's and that's in the middle of the next support area. It's barely hit 1.5. So, and that's not even the entry. The entry would be down here. We have this problem. Our stop loss is just going to be way too big on a trade like this because we want to get our stop loss beyond the resistance area. And this resistance area is quite large. Like I said, we moved this one to the middle, but damn, I always do that. This resistance area is pretty large. So to get our stop loss beyond resistance, we need to place it up there. I mean, we could place it a touch lower, inside of these wicks here that from the previous bounce, but still, it's not going to affect the overall trade that much. We're still kind of stuck with a very large stop loss and not a good risk to reward ratio. So, there's a few options you can take. First is you set a tight stop loss. Your reward ratio comes down to something more acceptable, and you take what is essentially a pretty risky trade because your stop loss is not that hard for price to hit. Or you just skip the trade. Or you don't so much as skip the trade, but you skip it in its current state and you wait for price to come up and form a decision here, if it doesn't reverse right away today. So there's a few options we can take here. I'm personally a very, very cautious trader. So I'm kind of erring towards the side of, just skipping. If price pushes back up to here and forms indecision, like further up to here where I could get a better stop loss and a better entry, I would definitely consider it. But right now, I'm thinking about just skipping this this setup that we identified yesterday. What I was hoping for yesterday was that we got indecision more kind of like up here, but yeah, it's clearly not happening. Yeah, even on the 12-hour chart, it's not that great. So yeah, my plan is to skip it for now and just see how it goes. I mean, it could push further back up and form indecision in here, and if it does, then I will potentially take the short. So I am still monitoring this pair. I'm going to monitor it closely. I'm not saying that there's not going to be a trade on this pair. I'm just saying that based on what I'm seeing right now, I'm not really planning on entering. But the fact still remains that we are at a very, very strong resistance area. Price is definitely stalling at this resistance area. Sellers are definitely fighting for control of price. So, there's still potential here. There's still definitely potential to take a reversal trade. I just don't want to take it right now because the numbers aren't in my favor. You've already entered, Ludwig? Why does it keep opening that? Have you, when you say you placed a sell, do you mean you placed a pending order, or do you mean you are actually in the trade? You entered on the 12-hour. Okay, so you would have entered at the bottom of this candle, presumably. And where was your stop loss? Just putting the area back here like it was yesterday. I think it was somewhere like there yesterday. No, it was a touch lower. It was placed on the daily, so yeah, I think it was something like that yesterday. All right, so essentially, based on yesterday's resistance areas, what we had yesterday, I'm not sure if this is exactly what you had. What you've done is you've placed a short trade here. Wait, no, sorry, let's go to 12-hour. You've placed a short trade here with a stop loss there and a target wherever. It doesn't really matter. well, it does matter, but I mean, it doesn't matter for what I'm about to say. Don't you think that maybe that stop loss is a bit tight? And the stop loss is below resistance, or at the very least just towards the lower end of resistance, if if it's that really wide resistance area we were talking about. But regardless, it's at the low end of resistance or below resistance. Don't you think your stop loss is a tad too small? Okay, fair enough. I mean, if you've reduced your risk by trading a smaller percentage, yeah, okay. Well, I can't fault you there. If you're managing your risk properly, then it doesn't matter. But your stop loss is a tad, it's just a little bit too tight. Anyway, let's go on to another thing. We've already spent 10 minutes talking about Euro GBP, so let's go on to another pair. All right, CAD JPY, that's another pair we talked about yesterday. I was talking about potentially entering a long, but yeah, price just didn't do what I wanted it to do. It dropped down and then it went up, blah, blah, blah. It just was not really a viable setup. Well, I mean, it was when we were looking at it. It was a weak setup, but it was, somewhat viable. But by the end of it, it just kind of let's drop down to 5 minute maybe would be good. That way you can see properly what it did. You see this big massive drop down, at 3 it just went bam, 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 bam. So yeah, there was no real valid setup there. By the end of it, that kind of candle broke the setup. So let's check out Euro AUD. Euro AUD is broken through support and it's headed down fast. No real tradable setup there. Let's check out AUD JPY. AUD JPY is still just doing what it was doing last week, being annoying and not producing much in terms of good price action setups. I mean, AUD New Zealand. AUD New Zealand has completed another price action setup that we're going to be discussing in depth in the forum, and that is a pullback. You'll notice that I posted a new section to the forum about different price action setups, and one of them I mentioned was a pullback. This was brought to my attention by a long-term member of Forex Mastermind. He spotted a kind of a pattern that happens quite often, and he alerted me to the pattern, and I've been looking into it, and it looks pretty solid. And I want to kind of develop a trading strategy around it, much like the reversal trading, but this is just a different sort of pattern. Well, I don't want to say that I want to develop a trading strategy around it. I more want to just, how do I explain this in the best way? I want to start testing. I want to start testing a few techniques for trading these kinds of setups. So when price breaks a support or resistance area, you'll notice a lot of the time it stalls and then it pulls back up. So trading that pullback to the previous area. Yeah, I guess research and testing of this setup. Yeah, it's a pretty simple setup. It's just a pullback. So when price breaks through a resistance area, sometimes it stalls and then it starts going back up to that area. Obviously, it doesn't always work. No setup always works. But I have seen a lot of occasions where this happens, and it's a pretty high probability setup. I mean, there, for example, from my first look, it's a pretty high probability setup, I'll just say. And here, for example. So we're going to be keeping a close eye on that and seeing, talking about that on the forum. So do keep an eye out. AUD/USD is still moving up. It's in the middle of a reversal trade. Obviously, it's way too late to enter because it's gone up by a significant amount already. But to those who entered that reversal trade, that's yeah, not that bad. You're doing pretty well. Euro JPY, all the JPY pairs went crazy yesterday. GBP AUD. Yeah, nothing much forming on those pairs either. GBP, JPY, let's, yeah, nothing happening. The JPY pairs, we're not going to see any potential trades on the JPY pairs today, just because of yesterday's big spikes. It's pretty much invalidated any potential setup. GBP USD. All right, let's pull this area up a touch. This is what I mean about dynamic support resistance. If you place your support resistance areas and you become too, I don't know, let's call it obsessed with saying, well, that is the placement I made and it's not going to move, then you're potentially going to miss a lot of decent setups. I don't mind adjusting my support resistance areas if it makes logical sense to do so. Right now, what we're seeing on the daily chart is indecision forming on GBP USD. It's forming a little higher than my support area was. So, you know, I pulled my support area up a little bit. Does pulling it up really change the support area much? No, not really. I mean, it still falls within these bounces very well. Now we're just getting potentially price stalling a little bit higher. Does that mean that price is not stalling from the support area? No, it's still stalling from the support area because support areas are wide, and so are resistance area. They're quite wide, and price isn't always gonna bounce exactly from the line we place. It's not like the center line is perfect and price is always going to come down to there and bounce away from there. That would be too easy. Support resistance is wide, so, you know, adjusting it to fall in line with recent indecision is not a bad move. Now, why isn't it a bad move? Simply because that indecision confirms that there's support there. So if this actually closes as indecision today, right? If it closes pretty much what it looks like right now, that plus the previous two candles confirms that there is in fact support in this area. So moving it up to kind of match that current evidence of support is a logical thing to do. And that being said, let's see what's going on with GBP USD because it's looking pretty decent. Okay, my chart is lagging out. I hate it when that happens. All right, so let's see what's happening. Okay, we got a 12 hour. 12 hour looks pretty good right now. But this setup is, even though we've adjusted the support area and we've pulled it up a bit, there's no denying that it is to the high side of the support area. Much like the Euro GBP setup we were looking at, but not quite as bad. But it's similar to the Euro GBP setup we were looking at. The indecision on GBP USD is to the high side of the support area. So the support area, you know, we could technically, if we really wanted to, move it up to here, but then it starts to become a bit absurd moving it that much. We do have two very clear recent bounces here. So I want to keep my support area roughly down there. Something like that. So this candle is forming on top of support, but it is to the high side of support. So what does that mean? What does that mean for us? Well, there's a few things about this setup. There's a few very, very important things about this setup. Can anyone guess what they are? Tell me why this is a pretty strong setup. Lester, I'll answer your question in a bit. Come on, guys, tell me why this is a strong setup. I see 3 of you are typing. It's not the strong preceding trend. Well, yeah, Russell, I guess you're onto something there, and so are you, Paul, but yeah, you haven't hit on the main thing. Not an existing channel, no. Well, I mean, I guess it is, but that's not the point. Support is held, no. There you go, Paul. Lowest area since Brexit. But what does that also mean? That also means that it's the lowest price has been since somewhere in the 1980s, 1984, something like that. That's what all the papers were saying back when Brexit happened. The pound has dropped to the lowest point since 1984. Now, I don't actually have charts that go back to 1984. I think very few of us do. So I can't confirm the exact date that this low was set, but I do know it was sometime in the 80s. Wait, actually, yeah, no, sometime in the 80s or something like that anyway. The point is, this is a hugely significant low. This is one of the lowest points the pound has been in, well, in my lifetime. Not all of you, but at least since you guys, a lot of you guys were kids, young kids, we haven't seen the pound at these levels. I mean, yeah, it did drop down to there, but what I'm saying is this general area here, this is very, very, very low for the pound. So, you know, what's going to happen over the next few days is, or over the next few weeks, if it gets stuck here for a while, is price either is going to break here and it's going to make some crazy lows that it hasn't seen in a very, very long time, or it's going to reverse and go back up. Now, last 2 times it attempted to break this low, it pushed back up and it bounced from that high. So it's in this channel. Someone pointed out it's an existing channel. It is. So it's stuck in this channel here. Now we're getting that kind of potential third bounce. It's bouncing a little higher. It's stalling up there. So this is a strong setup. You know, there's definitely potential for a nice reversal trade to the upside here if everything falls into place. So what would everything falling into place actually look like? Let's try to do some analysis before. We're doing this analysis before the candle actually closes, so you know it's not really worth that much. You don't really know until the candle closes. Yeah, I remember when I got $2 for $2 for £1. I can't remember what Christmas it was. It must have been sometime around 2008, something like that. When Americans were flying to, when Brits in London were flying to New York to do their Christmas shopping, because it was a lot cheaper to do it there. I would have been around, 2007, I think. It was Christmas of 2007 up here. You had Brits flying to New York to do their Christmas shopping. Anyway, we're getting sidetracked. Okay, so this setup, you know, I'd want to have my stop loss somewhere down here. Realistically, I'd want my stop loss beyond the support area. I'd want it beyond the most recent low there, the most recent dip down to there. You know, you could definitely put it tighter if you want, but it just becomes riskier and riskier. I'd want a pretty good stop loss, because what could happen here, right? Because it's so high above the resistance area, price could start reversing, trigger us into the trade, then fall back down. But if it falls back down, it's not necessarily going to fall all the way through. It might find support here, because support is an area full of buyers. So there might be buyers here. Well, there are buyers here, because we're already seeing signs of buyers here. The buyers here might be strong enough to push it back up. So placing our stop loss down here gives us this nice cushion of buyers here that are gonna kind of prevent our stop from being hit too easily. So I'd want to have my stop loss below support. So by below support, what I'm really meaning is below this recent low here, because that low is somewhat significant. So I'd want my stop loss, you know, well, it's a bit high there, but roughly below that low. Something like that. Now, as someone pointed out, there's a lot of minor support resistance in the way. That is absolutely correct. So we got minor support resistance there. We got some through here. You know, all of that. All of this area is messy. All of it. Right. So that's going to make it slightly tough. And it's really going to take points away from this trade. So, you know, something that I'm going to be including in the new Forex Mastermind videos is a points-based system for assessing the viability of a trade. And I'm not going to get into it in depth here, but this one's definitely getting minus points for the stop loss being large and for it being pretty high towards the high side of the support area. So it gets minus points for that. It gets minus points for the support, for the minor support resistance through here, because that's going to make it hard for us to hit our targets on that trade. So it has quite a few minus points already. If I were to do an in-depth analysis in this trade, this one would be close to the borderline of whether I think it's a safe trade to enter, and that's safe based on my risk assessment. You might be open to taking more risk than me, so your risk assessment might say to you, yeah, okay, it's worth entering. Right now, you know, I might consider entering. I'm not sure. What I want to see is this candle close. When this candle closes tonight, then I can make a proper decision on whether I want to enter the trade. It's never that great an idea to waste your time doing a full risk assessment on a setup that hasn't actually closed yet. You know, the indecision candle hasn't closed. We can't really make a solid decision on whether to enter this trade. So let's just wait and see how it plays out. Ooh, Euro USD. Now, Euro USD has a very similar setup to GBP USD, but this one might be a tad better. This is a long analysis video. Whoa, okay. All right, so Euro USD has a nice strong indecision candle. We can get the stop loss towards the low end of support pretty easily. The wick is towards the low end of support. It's up beyond that recent low there too, which is nice. Not essential, but nice. And the best thing about this is there's not very much minor support resistance at the 1 to 2 risk reward ratio point. So that's the 1 to 2 point. That means our stop loss is half of our take profit, or our take profit is double our stop loss. So 1 to 2 risk reward ratio. There's not much minor support resistance in the way. You know, if you look back to GBP USD, we have a whole mess of stuff, like I pointed out, and like someone mentioned in the chat. Who was that? It doesn't matter. We have a whole bunch of minor support resistance throughout there. But see, Euro USD, it doesn't so much have the same problem. I mean, we do have minor support resistance here, and maybe a little bit there, but I'm not too worried about that one. I'm more worried about this one. But price will have already hit its a full target of 1 to 2 by the time it gets too far into this area. And if you really wanted to, you could go for our minimum risk to reward ratio of 1.5, and then that would be pretty easily hit. But you know, I'd probably go for 2 on this one. 1.5 is the minimum, but if it makes logical sense to go for a risk to reward ratio of 2, then I'd do so. So yeah, this actually looks like a pretty good setup. So we've got Euro USD, GBP USD, and maybe Euro GBP if it keeps moving up. Now I forget what we were actually up to. We done Euro JPY, we done GBP AUD, we done GBP JPY. I don't think we did New Zealand USD. So let's continue with the analysis. There's nothing much going on New Zealand USD. USD CAD. What's going on with USD CAD? Can anyone see something here maybe with USD CAD? Can anyone guess what I'm thinking? Oh, you posted on the watch list too? Thanks. Good. I take it you posted it before I mentioned it, right? Well, Gareth, you're right. Paul, you're right. But Paul is more right. I mean, well, I guess you guys are both technically as right as each other. But the answer I was looking for from you guys was that it might look good on the 2-day chart. I wanted to, you know, when you join candles together, like I always say, price action is fluid. Price action is always moving. And if you look too much at one time frame, or if you limit yourself too much to the time frames that you're willing to look at, you're not always going to see a clear picture of what price is doing. Now, jumping up to the 2-day or maybe even the 3-day is going to give us a clearer picture of what price is doing up here. There it goes. So yeah, on the 3-day chart, we can clearly see that we have strong indecision forming on the resistance area, and the same on the 2-day chart. On the 1-day chart, it's just spread out a little bit too much. So while we can see it and we can interpret this as indecision, it just doesn't look as nice and it doesn't look as clear. And I find it a lot easier to enter trades and decide my entry, my stop loss if it looks a lot clearer. Now, this looks pretty decent actually. Yeah, okay. The thing is, I think I've only taken one trade on the 2-day chart. It doesn't really matter, technically speaking. Price is price. So if we take it on the daily, we take it on the 2-day, it's the same trade. But there's still that thing that price has been stalling here for a long time. It's on the 2-day chart. You know, it's still not exactly the same thing. This setup is likely to move a little bit slower than your normal daily or 12-hour chart setup. It already has been moving a lot slower, unless we get a breakout and it starts rushing down. Short, there we go. So let's see what it would look like in terms of risk reward ratio. Pretty messy throughout there, let's be honest. Pretty messy. That area there. There's some minor support resistance in the way. Minor support resistance, generally speaking, isn't enough to keep me out of a trade. Unless it's very, very strong. But, it is something that we need to consider. There is minor support resistance through here, so that could hold this trade back. But there is a pretty decent risk to reward ratio here. Even if you extend your target down to the next support area, you've got 2.26, but you can nab 1.5 around about here. Yeah, I mean, this is potentially a good setup. I'm probably going to trade this with a reduced position size, a significantly reduced position size. This is going to be a test trade based on indecision on the 2-day chart, as opposed to the normal indecision I trade, which would be the daily or the 12-hour or below. Yeah, I might enter short here on a test trade. Let's see how it plays out. The numbers were what I had up there. Roughly entry at the low of that indecision candle, stop loss towards the high of that indecision candle, and target somewhere down here. I'm not 100% on entering this trade, but at first glance it looks like it's a valid setup. I still have to run my full risk assessment on this trade, and it's not until I run my risk assessment that I can actually say to myself this is a good trade to take. So I'll do that after this analysis, and I'll let you guys know on the forum if I'm actually taking the trade. USD CHF. Who was the guy that asked if they should exit their USD CHF trade yesterday? Are you here? Do you guys remember towards the end of yesterday's analysis when the recording was stopped, someone was asking if they should exit USD CHF? You're here? Nice. All right, Danny, did you exit or did you actually stay in? Danny? Oh, he's typing. You're still in? Nice. I am glad to hear that. See, I was thinking about you yesterday. I was thinking, I wonder if he actually got out or if he stayed in. Because I was worried that you were probably going to exit the trade, to be honest. I thought you weren't going to stay in, because when price pulled up to here, see that high there? I thought you would have freaked out and got out. Now, would you agree that it was a good decision to stay in the trade? Yeah, you stopped looking at the 1 hour. That's good. Why is the chat delayed on this window and not on the main window? Like on this window, I can see you typing. There it comes in. This software is not that great, I have to admit. It's just bad. But yeah, you stayed in, so that's good. All right, so what was I going to say about this setup? Yeah, when we were talking yesterday, when I was going through the reasons you should stay in the trade, one of the main things I said was that you've entered based on a resistance area. Now, this resistance area is an area full of sellers. It's very possible for price to come back up and bounce away from it because sellers influence price again and price starts pushing down. So when you enter a short trade, if it doesn't go in your direction straight away, or a long trade, if it doesn't go in your direction right away, there's no sense of watching it on the 1 hour chart and just waiting and like freaking out every time it pulls back a little bit, because you're just going to get scanned out of the trade. We're going to look at this in the 1 hour in a second to see how bad it actually would have looked. But on the daily, it doesn't really look that bad overall. On the daily, it looks pretty decent still. Yeah, that spike up would have been a little bit scary, but it didn't last very long. It pulled up and bam, came back down. But on the hourly chart, if you were watching that all day, I mean, yeah, I'm guessing you probably would have freaked out and closed out, especially at that point when it made that new high. But in the end, what happened? Sellers took control of price here. We got that little indecision candle. Sellers took control of price and it's headed back down. It doesn't mean this trade's going to work out for sure. It still has a long way to go. Well, not a long way, but it still has some way to go before it hits your 1 to 2 target. But all in all, don't freak out and jump out of trades, and don't look at trades on the hourly chart if you've entered on the daily or the 12 hour. Okay, let's have a quick look at USD JPY. Oh, Lester, you had a question. What trade are you in? Sorry, I can't remember. You were asking me about JPY, if you should stay in the trade. CHF JPY, that is a weird pair. That is a very weird pair. New Zealand CAD, I'm just going to quickly finish off this analysis. New Zealand CAD, we don't have any resistance area to the upside. I think it's at an all-time high, or at least a high that it hasn't seen in a few decades. Euro CAD is still in the middle of a reversal, so yeah, there's not much potential here. All right, that's we're done with the analysis. Just to summarize, we've got potential Euro USD long, potential GBP USD long. Potential GBP USD long on the daily, potential Euro USD long on the daily. Euro GBP, we're just going to kind of adopt a wait and see attitude, see how it plays out. And USD CAD, a potential short on the 2-day. Yeah, I know that's weird, but let's give it a shot. Why not? If you do trade this, please, please, please either trade it on a demo account, because it's a 2-day chart and it's the first time, I'm guessing it's probably the first time you're doing that, or one of the first times. Or if not a demo account, trade with a drastically reduced position size. I prefer to do my testing on a live account with a reduced position size rather than a demo account, but that is up to you. Point is, be very, very careful with this setup here. Hey guys, thanks for watching this video. If you like this video, then give it a thumbs up below. If you have any questions regarding this video, then leave a comment below and I'll respond to it. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel to get notified as soon as I upload my videos. My Facebook and Twitter are in the description below. Thanks again for watching and happy trading.